All right, and here is the second part of our unit, or excuse me, of our lesson 3 here, writing equations in slope-intercept form. Okay, so what happens if we have 2 points? So previously, we had the slope and 1 point. So we had parts of what we needed, but not all. Okay, this time we really don't have either part that we need, right? Because we need slope, which is m, we need the y-intercept, which is b, we have neither. So here are the steps that we're going to use to be able to find the equation of a line if we know 2 points. The first step is going to be find slope using our formula, y minus y over x minus x. And then that puts us right back to where we were in the last video, which is where we then plug that information in with one of our points and find the b value. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like in action. All right, so here's my first coordinate. All right, I'm going to label my x's and y's. Okay. Now, again, it doesn't really matter which ones you go first or second or whatever, as long as they match each other, and the y's always have to go on top. So y minus y on top. So first step here is to find the slope. All right, so we're going to find slope. Okay, we do that with our formula y minus y over x minus x. Okay, so I'm going to plug in here. I'm going to go 5 minus 0 on top, which means I have to go 1 minus negative 4 on the bottom. Okay, so 5 minus 0 gives me 5. 1 minus negative 4, that's going to be plus a positive. Okay, and that gives me a 5. 5 divided by 5 gives me an m value of 1. Great. Okay, so I found half of what I need. I got to find the other half. Okay, so find b, or find the y-intercept. Okay, I'm going to choose one of those 2 points. It doesn't matter which one you choose. You should get the same answer either way. So I know that m is 1, and I'm going to choose the point 1, comma 5. And remember, I'm using y equals mx plus b as my formula, or my equation. I'm going to plug in all the parts that I know, right? So I know the m, I know the x, I know the y, I don't know b. So if I plug this in, I'm going to have 5 equals 1 times 1 plus b, right? Okay. And now I'm going to solve that equation. So 5 equals 1 times 1 is 1 plus b. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides because it's a positive 1. I'm going to find out that my b value ends up being 4. All right, so now I want to write my equation. I know my m value is 1. I know my b value is 4. So I'm going to go y equals 1x plus 4. Remember, I'm substituting just for the m and the b in that equation, y equals mx plus b, and that's my final answer. Let's take a look at that process one more time. Then I'll ask you to try on your own. Okay, so step 1, find slope, right? We did that in previous units. Okay, we're doing y minus y on top, x minus x on the bottom. Remember, the formula has a subtraction symbol in it, so if there's a negative, you're going to have to minus a negative. All right, I'm going to switch it up on here a little bit. I'm going to go negative 2 minus 5 this time. So the first coordinate is first, and that's the y minus y on top. And then that means I have to go negative 4 minus negative 3 on the bottom. Again, notice the minus sign for the formula plus the negative 3. So when I go ahead and subtract these, negative 2 minus 5, if you got to use a calculator, please do so. That gives me negative 7. Negative 4 minus negative 3 means plus a positive. That ends up being negative 1. Negative 7 divided by negative 1 gives me my m value of 7. All right, so I'm halfway there. Now I want to find my b value. All right, so find y-intercept. Okay, so I could choose either point, doesn't matter to me. I'm going to choose, I have m7, I just found that. I'm going to choose negative 4, negative 2. So I'm going to plug all these things into y equals mx plus b, right? So y equals mx plus b, plug in each of these where it goes, right? That's my x number, that's my y number. So negative 2, okay, equals 7 times negative 4 plus b. Okay, now I want to solve that. So 7 times negative 4 is negative 28. So I get negative 2 equals negative 28 plus b. Now to solve this, I got to add 28 because it was a minus. Do the opposite, right? And that ends up giving me 26 equals b. So I have the second part of what I need. Okay, so when I come over here, I have y equals mx plus b. Right, I found my m value to be 7. I found my b value to be 26. Therefore, my equation is y equals 7x plus 26. Remember, I'm only plugging in for the m and the b. Okay, I want to keep the x and the y in the equation. All right, now I'd like you to try 2 of these on your own, so go ahead and push pause. All right, and then come back and check and see how you did. All right, welcome back. Okay, so we're looking here at this problem. So first step is to find slope. Label your x's and y's. All right, so when I find my slope, all right, looks like I did -4 minus -2 over -4 minus 4. That gave me -2 over -8. When I reduce that, I get 1/4. So my m value was 1/4. Now I want to find the y-intercept. You can choose either coordinate. I chose the 4, -2. Notice how I plugged each of these pieces in, right? I plugged in the -2 for the y, the 1/4 for the m, the 4 for the x, plus b. I had to solve the equation. I came out to get -3 for my b value. Now I want to write my equation. So if my m is 1/4, if my b is -3, my equation ends up being y equals 1/4 x minus 3. And finally, go ahead and check out number 9. All right, so I label my x's and y's. I find my slope. All right, y minus y on top. So it's a minus a negative. It's going to turn into a plus. -3 minus 2 on the bottom. It's -5. I get -12 for my m value. Now I want to go find my y-intercept. Same process. Choose a point. Doesn't matter which point you choose. I chose 2, -24. I come out to get b 0 for that. And when I write my equation, I get y equals -12x. I could write the plus 0, but I chose not to. All right, last one here. We have a word problem. Apply your knowledge of writing equations to answer this question. A local pizza shop customer pays a set price for a large pizza plus an additional charge per topping. A large pizza with 2 toppings would cost $13.50. All right, so that's giving us information. So 2-topping pizza, $13.50. All right, that's a coordinate. And a large pizza with 5 toppings would cost $15.75. So 5 toppings is going to be $15.75. So what we want to do is try to write the equation, okay, using those 2 ordered pairs. That's going to tell us how much it costs per topping and how much the original cost of the pizza was. So I'm still doing my slope, right? So I'm going to do y minus y over x minus x. So I have, what, $15.75 minus $13.50 on top. And then I'm going to have, what, 5 minus 2 on the bottom. Okay, so I want to go ahead and subtract. All right, so what do I get there? 5, 2, and 225 divided by 3. All right, so that ends up giving me $1. No, excuse me. That gives me 0.75 cents per topping. Okay, so that's my M. All right, now if I want to know the price for the pizza, I want to go ahead and find my B value. That'd be the starting value, right? That's the set price for the large pizza. All right, so I can use my y equals mx plus b for this. All right, or I could kind of just think about this if I wanted to, right? If 2 toppings, 75 cents a topping, that's $1.50. I could subtract $1.50 from $13.50, and I could probably get away with doing this in my head. Okay, so to me, it's looking like that pizza is going to be, what, $12, right? But if you use the process we talked about today in this video, you're going to go ahead and do y equals mx plus b. Okay, you're going to choose a point. I'll choose 1350, comma 2. So I'm going to plug in 1350 for y. I'm going to plug in 0.75 for m, 2 for x plus b. And you're going to end up doing the same process I did in my head, which is 1350 equaling $1.50 plus b. And when I subtract $1.50, I find out that my b value ends up being 12. So what does the problem ask? Writing the equation. So if we were writing the equation, we would say y equals 0.75x plus 12. And that's how the pizza shop's determining, okay, the cost of your pizza. 75 cents for a topping, okay, which can change based on how many toppings you get. And then $12 is what you're starting with. All right, so hopefully you copied those notes down. We'll see you in class.